We're going to be looking at outcomes, Unit 7, Outcome 2, and starting with number 4A. And what I want you to do is just write down the problems and follow along with the notes. This is a little bit longer of a lesson, so feel free to pause it if you need a break or if you need to slow it down or anything like that to take notes. Pause it whenever you need to. Okay, so here's the first problem, first example, outcome 2, factoring trinomials. What we're going to be doing here with this first step is we're going to be looking at ax squared plus bx plus c. So what we need to do here is find a, b, and c. A is the number with the x squared, so a is 5. B is the number with just x, so that's negative 22, and c is the constant, which is 8. Next, we're going to multiply a times c. So 5 times 8. 5 times 8 is 40. And then we're going to find the factors of 40 that add to b, which is negative 22. The factors of 40 are 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. Now, you might notice that none of these add up to a negative. If I add those together, those are not negative. So what we need to do is find the negative factors. The negative factors, if you remember, negative times a negative is a positive. So those would work as well. So we have negative 1 and negative 40, negative 2 and negative 20, negative 4 and negative 10, negative 5 and negative 8. Negative 2 and negative 20 add up to negative 22. So those are the factors that we were looking for. Since a is not 1, we do have to split the middle. So what we're going to do is take these factors and split them in the middle. So instead of negative 22, we have negative 2 and negative 20. They still add up to negative 22, but we're using these numbers to split it. So I have 5x squared minus 2x minus 20x plus 8. Next, we're going to split the problem into two parts and find our GCF. So for the first half, our GCF, the only thing I can divide both of these two terms by is x. And then over here, the only thing I can divide these two terms by is negative 4. I can divide by 4, but because this first term is negative, I have to make it a negative 4. All right. My GCF goes outside of parentheses, and then I divide. 5x squared divided by x leaves me with a 5x. And then negative 2x divided by x, the x's cancel, and I have a negative 2 here. Next, I have a negative 4. So my negative 4 goes out front of the parentheses, and then I divide. Negative 20 divided by 4 is 5, and then I have that x that I'm bringing down. And then 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. You'll notice again that I have exactly the same thing in both parentheses, so I have a GCF there. So I'm going to divide by the GCF, which is 5x minus 2. My GCF goes out front in my parentheses, and then whatever's left over when I divide is what goes into my second parentheses. So I have an x here and a negative 4. That's what goes into my second parentheses. So in factored form, my answer is 5x minus 2, and then x minus 4. Moving on to the second problem, I have 7x squared plus 16x plus 4. Again, I'm finding a, b, and c. A is 7, b is 16, c is 4. A times c, that's 7 times 4, which is 28. And then I'm finding the factors of 28 that add up to b, which is 16. The factors of 28 are 1 and 28, 2 and 14, and 4 and 7. Looks like 2 and 14 add up to 16, so that's what I'm going to use to split the middle, because again, a is not 1. I have 7x squared, then I have 2x from here, 14x also from here, and then 4. And again, 2 plus 14 does add up to 16. Again, I'm going to split the problem into two parts and find my GCF. My GCF for this first half is going to be x. That's the only thing I can divide both of those by. And for the second half, I have 2. I can divide both of those evenly by 2. My GCF goes out front, and then I divide. 7x squared divided by x is 7x. 2x divided by x is 2. And then my GCF for the second half goes out front. And then I divide. 14 divided by 2 is 7. I have my x. And then 14 divided by 2 is 2. Again, I have the same thing in both parentheses, so I'm going to divide by that GCF. My GCF goes out front, and then whatever's left over, x plus 2, goes in my second parentheses. So in factored form, my answer is 7x plus 2, and then x plus 2. For example 5, this one's going to look a little bit different because I have an x cubed here. And all three of these terms have an x. So that actually tells me that there's a GCF that I can divide all of those terms by. So I'm going to start by finding my GCF. So I have an x to the third so that I know I have at least an x, and it looks like all of those could also be divided by 3. So I'm going to divide by 3x on all three terms. My GCF goes out front, and then I divide. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X cubed divided by x is x squared. 21 divided by 3 is 7. X squared divided by x is x. 18 divided by 3 is 6. X divided by x cancels. Now I need to go through the exact same steps I was just doing with this here. Now, what I'm going to do is find A, B, and C, but just with what's in parentheses here. So A is 2, B is 7, and C is 6. A times C is going to be 2 times 6, which is 12. Then I'm going to find the factors of 12 that add up to B, which is 7. The factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Since I'm looking for ones that add up to 7, 3 and 4 add up to 7. A is not 1, so I'm going to split the middle. That's going to look like this here. I have 2x squared plus 3x plus 4x plus 6. Again, I'm going to split that up into two parts. And then I have my GCF here for the first half is going to be x. My GCF for the second half is going to be 2. I'm going to divide those. My GCF goes out front of the parentheses. And then when I divide, I have 2x plus 3 inside parentheses. For the second half, my GCF goes out front, and then I'm going to divide. 4 divided by 2 is 2x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I have the same thing in both parentheses, so that's my new GCF. I'm going to divide by that. That goes out front in parentheses. And then I have x plus 2, which is left over. That goes in my other parentheses. Now I left something out here, so let me go ahead and fix that. I also need this 3x here to go out front. So I'm going to have a new answer here. It's actually going to be 3x. I can't forget about this original GCF that I took out. So I'm going to put 3x, and then I have 2x plus 3 and x plus 2. That is my final answer. All right. Moving on to 5b. It's going to be similar where I have an x cubed out front here. So again, I have that x cubed. So I'm going to find a GCF. In this case, my only GCF is x. So I'm going to divide everything by x. That leaves me with an x. And then I have x squared plus 7x plus 10 left over when I divide. So I'm going to now do ax squared plus bx plus c. In this case, a is 1, b is 7, c is 10. I'm going to multiply a times c. And that's 1 times 10, which is, of course, is 10. Then I need to find the factors of 10 that add up to b, which is 7. The factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. 2 times 5 does add up to 7 when I add them. In this case, a is 1, so I don't actually have to split the middle here. I can just use my factors, and that's going to look something like this. So I didn't forget my x this time, so my x comes down, and then I just have x plus 2 and x plus 5. I can do this step. I can skip the splitting the middle anytime a is 1. All right, moving on to example 6. My a in this example is 1. So we're going to find ax plus bx plus c. A is 1, b is 2, c is 1. So again, I'm going to multiply a times c. That's 1 times 1, which of course is just 1. And then I need to find the factors of 1 that add up to b, which is 2. And the only factors of 1 are 1 and 1. And so those are going to be my factors. A is 1 in this example, so I don't have to split the middle. I can just write my factors. So I have x plus 1 from here, x plus 1 from here. We could also write, in this example, x plus 1 squared, because those are exactly the same. They both have pluses, so that would work as well. Example 6b. Again, I'm starting with ax squared plus bx plus c. A is 1, b is 2, and c is negative 15. I'm going to multiply a times c. That's 1 times negative 15, which gets me negative 15. Then I'm going to find the factors of negative 15 that add up to 2. So the factors of negative 15, that's negative 1 and 15, and negative 3 and 5. If you remember, a positive and a negative always give me a negative answer. Okay? In this example, negative 3 and 5, if I add those together, they add up to 2. A is 1 in this example, so I don't have to split the middle. I can just go straight to factors b minus 3 and then b plus 5 from here. All right, example 6c. Again, I'm finding ax squared plus bx plus c. A is 1, b is 18, and c is negative 63, a little bit of a bigger number here. A times c, we're going to multiply 1 times negative 63, which will get us a negative 63. Then we're finding the factors of negative 63 that add up to 18, which is b. Our factors of negative 63, that's negative 1 and 63, negative 3 and 21, negative 7 and 9. And in this, the ones that add up to 18 are negative 3 and 21. Again, a is 1 in this example, so we don't have to split the middle. We can just go straight to our factors. X minus 3, x plus 21, and we're done. All right, example 7a. In this example, we're doing ax squared plus bx plus c. There's no GCF that we can draw from this, so we're just going to go straight to this. A is 2, b is 9, c is 10. Again, we're multiplying a times c. That's 2 times 10, which is going to be 20. Now we need to find the factors of 20 that add up to b, which is 9 again. 20 factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. 4 times 5 does add up to 9, so those are the factors we need. Now in this case, a is not 1, so we do have to split the middle here. So a couple extra steps. So we have 2x squared, and then we have 4x plus 5x. 4x plus 5 from here, plus 10. And if you double check, 4 plus 5 is still 9. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up here into 2 parts. I have 2x squared plus 4x, and then 5x plus 10. My GCF for the first half is 2x. My GCF for the second half is 5. That goes out front of my parentheses, and when I divide, 2 divided by 2 is just 1. X squared divided by x is just x. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and the x's cancel here. And then 5 divided by 5, which is 5 goes outside, and then 1x. 10 divided by 5 is 2. I do have the same thing in both parentheses there, so that's my new GCF. I'm going to divide by that, and that's going to go outside of my parentheses. And then whatever's left over, this 2 and this 5, go inside the other parentheses. All right. Next one, again, I don't see a GCF here, so I'm just going to go straight to ax squared plus bx plus c. A is 5, B is negative 3, and C is negative 2. I'm multiplying A times C, so that's going to be 5 times negative 2, which is negative 10. I'm going to find the factors of negative 10 that add up to B, which is negative 3. Factors of negative 10 are negative 1 and 10, negative 2 and 5. Now, none of these add up to negative 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the signs. I'm going to have a positive 1 and a negative 10, and a positive 2 and a negative 5. In this example, those two add up to negative 3. Again, A is not 1, so I'm going to have to split the middle. So I have 5x squared plus 2x from here, minus 5x from here, minus 2. And if I combine those, it still gets me a negative 3x. I split it up into two parts here. My GCF for the first half is x, and my GCF for the second half is negative 1. My GCF goes out front, and then I divide. 5x squared divided by x gives me 5x. 2x divided by x is just 2. This is a negative 1, so negative 1 goes out front here. Negative divided by negative gives me a positive 5x. And then negative 2 divided by negative 1 gives me a positive 2. Again, I have exactly the same thing in both parentheses, so that's my new GCF. I'm going to divide that. That goes outside in my first parentheses, and then what's left over, x minus 1, goes inside my second parentheses. And we're done.